Today's guest built a company that raised over 400 million US dollars, landed a $1 billion deal with Roche, and went public on the New York Stock Exchange. Then his board removed him. Roche walked away and the company sold for parts. Most founders would take a long vacation after that. Armon went back to the lab. Armon is a chemical engineer by training, Stanford undergrad, MIT PhD under Robert Langer, one of the most prolific investors in history. He founded SQZ Biotech to use mechanical cell engineering to fight cancer. And when the first company didn't survive its own success, he took the same core science and built Portal Biotechnologies, a platform company now serving over 100 clients, including 9 of the top 10 pharma companies in the world, barely 2 years after launching. We are going deep on what it actually feels like to get fired from your own company, how he raised 20 million US dollars with a track record, and why he says the biggest mistake at SQZ wasn't scientific, it was strategic. This is Deal Makers and Fakers. Armon, thank you so much for joining this podcast episode. I'm super excited. How was your day so far?
Thanks for having me. Day's just getting started, but so far so good. A little rainier than I would have liked it to be.
Oh yeah, same here in Germany actually. We have snow again and spring is coming. I'm so much waiting for the spring. Yeah, it's super weird. Weird times, weird weather. Things will hopefully change now in the next weeks. I'm super excited for that.
Okay.
Armon, I have a lot of questions prepared. I have to say your background is impressive and I would like to start maybe with some questions about your childhood because I saw that you grew up between California, Iran, Dubai, before Stanford and MIT. So my question is, which of those places shaped your risk tolerance the most?
Ooh, shaped my risk tolerance the most. I would say, ironically, it was the mix of them that shaped the risk tolerance because we moved a lot. And I think for anyone just like, even moving cities or moving schools within the same country tends to be nerve-wracking, but California versus Iran is a super different place, or Iran versus Dubai, also a super different place. So I think all that moving around probably made me more relaxed about change and more kind of quick to adapt to it. So I think that adjusted the risk tolerance. I think the other thing that had a big influence on me was actually growing up in Iran, because I was there from when I was 5 till when I was 13. I think it being a third world country, you kind of saw the very clear contrast of how different people's lives can be. Like the lower ends of the income bracket could be extremely different from what you would see people at the higher ends or what you would see when you're back at the US, et cetera. And I think that really instilled a deep feeling in me that if you've been luckier in life, like, have good parents, went to good school, et cetera, you have an obligation to make the world better for those ones that weren't as lucky. And so that kind of drove a lot of it. And I feel like I wouldn't have had that contrast if I fully grew up in the US, because I think there's still a floor in these first world countries that people don't tend to fall below. But in third world countries, there's usually no floor. And so it can be pretty bad.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, that's super interesting. I also have another question. So, Armon, you also have a podcast, and I think you also recently launched it. I think actually we launched our podcast both at the same time. And I heard, and I heard some of the episodes. Like, huge shout out, it's amazing. So everyone who is listening right now, you should definitely check out Armon's podcast as well. My question to you now is, what is the worst question you ever have been asked as a guest?
Oof, I don't know if there's been one that's that bad.
Okay, I hope that I will not ask this question then now in this episode.
Yeah, let's put it this way. I think as long as people are genuinely wondering about it, I'm like, sure, why not? Every question's valid if they're wondering about it.
I like that. Cool. Okay, let's move on to your background story. And I already mentioned like your background is amazing and super interesting. So in my research, I saw that you studied chemical engineering at Stanford and then you went to MIT for your PhD under Robert Langer. And like, was biotech always your plan or did something specific redirect you to that direction?
No, it was not. It wasn't really the plan. I got redirected. So the reason I did chemical engineering as an undergrad is because I always liked science and math. Applying it was interesting to me as opposed to just theoretically studying it. So engineering seemed to be the natural choice, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. So the reason I picked chemical engineering was because it seemed the least restrictive. Because you cover enough of like mechanical stuff, materials, chemistry, bio. So it ends up being a big, painful major, but it least restricts your future options. So that's honestly why I picked it. And the kind of research I was doing as an undergrad had nothing to to do with biology. It was all like organic electronics and flexible display technologies. I was working for Jinan Bao, who's one of the professors there. So then when I came to MIT for PhD, I was looking at all kinds of interesting projects, and kind of the mindset I had developed was the reason I like science is that if you make a difference through science, no one can ever take it back. It's irreversible. So what I mean is, like, if you help invent an airplane, people will always fly. Doesn't matter who the government is, etc. But if you create a better education system, the next terrible person can come obliterate that, and it'll be as if it never happened. I like the permanence of making advancements through technology or science. That's why I went down the PhD track. And then when I was looking at the different projects during my PhD, one of them that really caught my eye, which is something Klaus Jensen and Bob Langer were working on, delivery of materials into cells. Cells are the basic little machines that make everything happen in the body. So it made a lot of sense that if you could put whatever you want in them, now you can engineer anything about them that you would like, and that could unlock a whole new world of therapeutics and biological insights. So that conceptually seemed interesting to me. So that's why I joined that project.
Amazing. And by the way, I love already how you explain things, because actually Armon got a little briefing before that he should explain things very easy so that everyone can understand that. So thanks for that. And like during your PhD, at what point did you then realize that this was a company and not like just a thesis?
It took a while for me to realize that. So initially we had discovered the whole mechanism of squeezing cells to deliver material into them. It seemed very useful because now you could deliver whatever you want into whatever cell type, and that seemed to unlock a lot of applications. And we were collaborating with a lot of different academic groups, whether it was like MIT and Harvard. We actually had some early collaborators in Germany at like Goethe University. So there were a lot of different people we were working with. And at some point I was starting to realize, like, hey, we're spending all of our time essentially playing customer support to our collaborators as opposed to doing our own projects. Maybe this should turn into a company. And so that's how we thought to start Squeeze, our old company, because it was like, well, there's clearly a lot of interest in it. Let's start the company, have the company deal with supplying the collaborators, and then we can focus on our own work, which is ironically why I did a postdoc in immunology in parallel to us getting Squeeze going, because I myself wasn't fully convinced that I should completely commit to the company side, but it seemed reasonable to get something going. So that's how that had started.
Interesting. And what would you say did founding a company at that stage actually mean? Like, did you have a business plan, or like a lawyer, or like a pitch deck, or like a prototype?
We were making everything up as we went. So the educational parts, aside from obviously the science that we knew, was that I had taken a few classes at the business school at MIT Sloan, and they really encourage entrepreneurship and stuff. So there were a few classes that would talk about what's the world of startups like. Obviously, what you learn in class is very different from the reality of doing it.
Like always.
Yeah. So we just kind of started to make it up as we went. Like, we happened to meet a few lawyers. I don't even remember how we met them. And they're like, oh yeah, it's really not that hard to start a company. We're like, okay, great. And then we had to talk to MIT's technology licensing office, because we already had prototypes that we were sharing with our academic collaborators. Okay. So there was something that we could do. And we had already figured out a supplier for the chips, silicon chips that we were using. Actually, a German company close to Frankfurt was the one making them for us. So we had a baby supply chain going, and we wrote up a really terrible business plan, but the funding was from my two professors and my parents, because we thought we needed only $100,000 to get going. And so each of them put in $30,000. My parents had saved enough for my first mortgage. And I was like, can I please use it on this? And they're like, are you sure? I'm like, yes, I want to waste it over here.
Wow. Oh wow, this is so impressive, because honestly, sometimes I think about the risk tolerance here in Europe or Germany and compared to the United States. I honestly don't think that this would actually work here in Europe. Like, if I would have gone to my parents and tell them, hey, can you maybe put that money into like a business that I plan to build? I'm not sure if they would be happy about that, to be honest.
Well, for them, they were conflicted, because the funny thing was my parents never liked that I went to do a PhD. They thought I was being too much of an unrealistic nerd for the rest of my life. So they were torn because on the one hand, they thought I was being crazy for trying to start the company. On the other hand, they felt that if anything was going to pull me out of academia, this was going to be it. So to their credit, they're like, okay, we'll gamble this because if we're ever going to get him out of there, this might be the way to do it. And it's his own stupid fault if he wastes it. So that's how that happened.
And was it difficult for you to convince like the professors at the university to invest into the business, or like how much did they were involved in the project then so far?
Luckily, it wasn't, to their credit, it wasn't hard to convince them. I think they were really excited about the project. We had actually managed to get a lot of grant money behind it. So we had written, in the NIH, there's this type of grant called the R01, which is in a way the biggest you can get for an individual professor. So we had gotten a few million from the NIH, I think, and with all the collaborators, things going well, I think they were fairly confident that this technology is definitely going to do something. And they were supportive of like me trying to be the one that would do it because, I would be annoying sometimes, but really useful at other times. So on balance, they felt like, okay, maybe he has a shot of doing it. So luckily, they were actually pretty easy with it. That's how we got it going.
Sounds really like a professor that you actually want to have in university that can also teach you something. So that's great. Yeah. And looking back at the founding period, was there one moment where you almost didn't start the company, like anything that nearly killed it before it actually existed?
There were many reasons the company could have died. Like one point, which was a little bit before company there was a bit of a conflict between me and one of the other postdocs in the lab because that postdoc was the one originally making the silicon chips that we would use. And he had some religious reservations about what kinds of applications it could be used for, whereas we wanted to go into some stem cell and regenerative medicine applications. And so, for example, that was one where he cut off supply of the chips. And so we had like a week or two to figure out what we could do about it. And luckily, we found an alternative supply when the gun was to our head. So that was one thing that could have really derailed things quickly. I would say the flip of that, like the moment I keep remembering of what made it finally click that we will start Squeeze was ironically, I was on my way back from Christmas vacation with my parents in Dubai, and I was in the Amsterdam Schiphol airport with like 8 hours of nothing to do. So I was sitting there just like doing rough math on, okay, if we really started something, like how many of these devices would we need to sell for it to be profitable, for it to like make enough money, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, I had landed on like, oh, with just $50,000, we could get this going. That math ended up being dead wrong. But it was because I didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. But to me, I was like, oh, clearly we should do this. In my like half jet lagged brain, I was like, all right, we have to do this now. And then so when I got back, we started putting everything in motion. But there were a million reasons Squeeze almost died in those early days.
I think that's quite common, probably. One thing that I like feel is super, super interesting here is that you went from a Harvard postdoc fellowship to like a full-time CEO.
Yeah.
So that's like a very big switch. Like for you, what was the hardest part of that identity shift from a scientist to like an operator?
Yeah, so when we started Squeeze, I was just graduating my PhD and I was going to go do the immunology postdoc at Harvard. In my head, as probably most PhDs would assume about themselves, I was like, okay, I can probably be good at the science stuff, but I probably won't be good at the business stuff. So my friend Agustin, who had joined and who was helping to start Squeeze, he was handling all the business stuff and he was going to be full-time at the company. I was handling the science stuff and I wasn't going to be full-time. I was going to be doing the postdoc. Fast forward a year and a half. I think I had realized more and more through the company stuff that like, oh, I can kind of do these other parts and I might be good at some of them at least. Like you can learn it along the way. And in addition to that, going back to the point of what I really care about is having maximum impact for people, I was increasingly realizing on the academic side, it's very hard to have that next step of clinical translation and actual real world impact because you might create something interesting, but someone still needs to take that and go do something with it. In academia, you write a paper about it and that's kind of the end of it. You move on to the next project and hope someone else picks it up. And so I was increasingly realizing that that is going to be a challenge in academia. And so my debate for switching from postdoc to full-time at the company was really about, okay, do I think I should continue to be academic and come up with new things and just hope and pray that someone goes and translates it? Or do I really, really care about this particular problem and I'm going to jump in and go do it? And the conversation that one of the multiple conversations that really convinced me in the end, but a good summary version of it was I was talking to Bob Langer, my PI, about it. And I was like, why didn't you ever jump to your companies? Because he has a lot of companies. I'm like, why didn't you ever jump? He's like, because I'd rather, help enable people like you to create a bunch of things and go do it. I'm like, okay, do you think any of your companies failed that wouldn't have failed if you were there? He's like, absolutely. There were definitely cases where I thought if I was there, like that wouldn't have happened. And so he was telling me, he's like, look, if you think this is the most important thing you'll ever do, you should jump. If you think you'll come up with a bunch of other stuff that'll matter down the line, you shouldn't jump and decide again later. And I was like, no, I'm pretty convinced that this will be a huge deal. Like, that's it.
You had your business plan from the airport. So
I was like, this is a bulletproof plan with $50,000. We're going to make the best company ever. Obviously, we should do that.
But honestly, like his advice is great. I think like you need people who go into these companies to build them up. But on the other hand, you also need people who are more like multipliers who help others to build up their companies. So that definitely makes sense. Now, we already started to speak a little bit about your first check. I would like to speak now about first institutional round you actually did for SQZ. In my records, it says that you raised 1 million in a seed round in 2014. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that was an angel round in 2014.
And that was like the second round after you raised from friends and family.
Yeah.
So then after that came like the 1 million seed round from the angels, right?
Yeah.
And how did you find like those first investors, especially with your background? Like you came fresh from the university with no real operating history. So at that point, how far was your prototype already? Like what did you show them and how did you convince them?
The way we met them was just a mix of luck and networking, because me and my friend Agustin, who was helping to get Squeeze going at the time, like we didn't know anyone. And so we were just kind of meeting random people at these accelerators and networking events, and one thing would lead to another. So for example, we had met this one angel investor who was part of an angel group, and so he liked us and brought us to the 2 different angel groups that he was in. That led us to meeting some other people that led to a third angel group that we could present at. So it was just a series of kind of network effects that helped get us there. And I think one of the really funny things was just setting valuation and all that, because we were in a discussion with one of these angels who was excited to kind of get in, and he's like, okay, what valuation are you guys thinking? And we hadn't even talked about it before. Like even me and Agustin hadn't talked about it, and we just kind of look at each other, and I forget which one of us just said, oh, 4 million pre. And the guy's like, okay. And then like we walk out of the meeting, I'm like, I guess that's our price now.
Wow. So at this point, you knew that you need to raise 1 million, but you did not really think about like the dilution or how much equity you want to give away then for that round.
Well, we had no idea what would be a good price. I mean, we had heard random numbers, but who knows what a good price is. And we were hoping that the other side would be the one proposing something, and we would kind of go negotiate from there, but kind of put on the spot. I think in both of our heads, it was like, well, we better say something now because this guy is willing to do it, and might as well just make something up and see what he says, as opposed to tell him we'll get back to him. Because, I think all these investments, especially in these early stages, are a little bit of an impulse buy. It's like, oh, they're excited. It's a cool thing to do. Here's what to them is a small check. For the angels, VCs are a little bit different. So anyway, that's how that valuation happened. And we met more and more people throughout. And at that stage, the things that were convincing them that you were asking about, like we had some initial customers, like we had some people at Harvard and MIT that were using our stuff. Some companies were interested in chatting with us. And luckily, we had gotten a lot of recognition for the technology. So we had a big paper that had come out in PNAS. We, around that time, had gotten recognized as one of the top 10 world-changing ideas by Scientific American. Like we were in the same article as CRISPR. We had a lot of scientific validation. People like Bob Langer had a big reputation in the startup world. So people would also take comfort like, oh, if it's one of his children coming out and doing things, then they have a better chance than most people. So that was the mix of factors. And honestly, in the end, I think especially for angels, it really just comes down to, do they like you or not?
I agree. It's so much about the human connection and just seeing if you can actually work with them, because in the end you also put these people on your cap table, so they will have an influence on your company. So it just makes sense. But that sounds very interesting. And now I have another question, because I need to understand the inflection points. From my research, I then saw that you eventually raised over 400 million in total, and also you got this one deal with Roche.
Yeah.
So what happened like in between? Like between the seed round now and the 400 million you raised over multiple rounds, basically?
Sequence of events from there was we did the seed round, continued to make progress trying to sell the tool, and then Roche and Pfizer had both gotten interested in what we were doing because cell therapies had become a big thing. We had made some noise about what we were doing, so they were very intrigued. And we were talking to some of the other pharmas too. Roche had taken a different view from the others, where I would say when others would meet with us, they would view us as a tool that can help make the thing they were already working on work a little bit better. Roche was the only one that kind of asked the question and meant it. They're like, this is just interesting. What would you do with it? And we're like, oh, well, we would do this. These cancer vaccine mechanisms, which weren't exactly a popular choice, but there were technical reasons we thought that it could be very interesting. And the Roche team was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. So they had gotten more engaged. That led to them pushing further and further. And then Polaris, which is one of the VCs that had been getting close to us through Amy Schulman over there, they also knew the Roche team was very interested and were helping a little bit with some of that. So that led to our first Series A, which was 5 million from VCs led by Polaris. It was this intersection of they liked the technology, that they liked us, and they had the validation that they knew Roche was sniffing around. Because I think, like, taking a step back, the bigger context was we were viewed as a bunch of children with a cute technology and our cutesy little cartoons, but otherwise it was hard to take us seriously because normally in biotech, especially back then, a biotech CEO is like a 45-year-old or 50-year-old in a suit that was at pharma for a while. Like, it did not look like people like me. And so, like, no one was really taking us seriously. But the fact that Roche was looking and some people at Polaris were willing to look past our childishness, I think that was what led to that 5 million Series A in 2015. After that, Roche did their first big deal with us back in 2015, and that suddenly made everyone pay attention because they're like, what? Roche, the like big, smart, conservative pharma decided to bet on these children and their cartoons? Like, they must be doing something right. So suddenly people that wouldn't answer us before were like, oh, I'm so sorry, I missed your 5th email. Like, how's it going? And I'm like, great, thank you. I'm sure you missed it by accident. And then anyway, so from there, like, we continued to make good progress because we had the Roche validation. Then we did a 24 million Series B, continued to move. Then eventually in 2018, we did another Series C round in tandem with Roche decided to double down on us. So they came in with a much bigger deal in 2018 because they were very happy with what we had been showing and they were excited about some other programs we were working on that wasn't part of the deal. So they came in with kind of a bigger re-up that further helped validate to the investor side that things look good. And then so anyway, over the time, I think we had raised about, what was the total number? I don't know, a little over 170 or something on the private side, or 150-ish or something. And then we decided to go public in 2020, and then we raised more money on the public side. So I think we took like 140-ish on the public side through the IPO and the follow-ons. But yeah, that's kind of the accumulation of the funding rounds, but happy to dig in anywhere there.
Super interesting. No, thank you so much for clarifying. I actually also want to speak a little bit about Portal and then also your current funding rounds and then get some real world advice from you, especially in that industry, because I think fundraising in that industry is actually quite challenging right now. And it's definitely one of the industries where you always require more and more money compared to like other industries where you maybe do like 1 or 2 or 3 rounds and then you're profitable. I think in biotechnology, you just need way more time. So let's definitely speak also about that briefly. So after the IPO, the stock then came under pressure. And then I think after some time, the board of the company announced like a new strategic prioritization and you stepped down as like a CEO. I want to understand what then happened after that and how you then directly moved on and started to work on Portal.
What happened there was we had gone public at the time. We eventually had 3 clinical trials going. At our peak, we were about 150 people. We were probably burning 70, 80 million a year, something like that was our burn rate. So very much focused on the therapeutics at that point. And then biotech financing had gotten very hard. So during COVID, biotech had gone to the moon and many people had IPO'd, including us. And then they eventually went through the hangover phase. Stocks were crashing. No one was doing well. And everyone was under pressure. And so we were having a debate on what do we do given this pressured context. And the normal playbook is that if you're a biotech that has an asset in clinical trials, has a clinical trial going, you just focus on that, hope that the data looks good, because if it looks good, then you'll get more money, or pharma will buy you, or both, and then you're good. And if it doesn't work, you just shut down. I mean, happens all the time. It's a respectable failure, let's call it. And then you move on and do your next thing. So that was what the board was pushing for, because that's what people typically do. I was very opposed to that because I felt that we have a technology that can do many, many things. And I don't want it to live and die by this one thing that it can do. And this is a common curse in biotech, where if you have a platform technology that can do a lot of stuff, you will functionally live and die by the first trial you do. It doesn't matter if it could have helped the next 99 clinical indications you could have done. If the first one didn't work, you're screwed.
Okay.
It'll just more or less go away. We were fighting about that. They wanted to ultimately go for the lead clinical indication focus. I didn't, so they kicked me out, even though it says resign. But they were like, no, he doesn't want to do the single indication, and we know that even if we order him to do it, he's probably not going to do it. He's going to sneak in other things, secretly keep stuff alive, because I had a history of doing stuff like that. So they weren't wrong about that part. So they're like, if we're actually going to do it this way, he can't be around it because he won't listen, because I was opposed. So anyway, so that's what happened there. And then once I was out, the stock crashed like 70% or something on the day of the news, because the investors got really mad. Roche got really mad because, interestingly, most of the board was not investors. Yeah. So of the 10 board members, 9 of them were not investors. Only one of them was an investor.
Oh, wow.
And they were split on this decision. So actually the one investor was more on my side of things, but they were doing what they thought people would want them to do in their defense, because that was the normal thing to do in biotech. But turned out the investors actually cared about the platform side, so they were really upset and confused by what happened. And so the stock crashed 70% when they revealed the news, and Roche had gotten really upset at them because they had eliminated the platform side and the people that they worked with. From there on, I knew that Squeeze was in kind of a death spiral, probably. I started to look at other things to do.
Did you ever take a break in between, or did you immediately start to look for something new?
I didn't really take a break. I mean, everyone was telling me I should take a break. They're like people that cared, the mentor said, they're like, we know it's not in your nature, but please just take 6 months off. You've been going at 150% for 10 years. Please just do nothing for a few months.
Honestly, Armon, if you describe the full journey, it sounds like really a rough time. Definitely a lot of learnings and cool experiences that happened in between, but also super intense. So, I would probably also do and if you now think about going public and doing an IPO, is that something you also would consider in the future for Portal now, for your current company? Still?
Yeah. I actually liked public more than private. I know most people wouldn't say that, but I actually liked it more, despite what happened. The reasons people normally don't like it is because they don't like the rules. There's a lot of rules and all that, but I actually liked the rules because it meant that your competitors couldn't say stupid things and get away with it. Because when you're on the private side, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors stuff that people will do. They'll exaggerate all kinds of stuff, etc. And they can get away with it because the way the rules work on the private side, it's a lot easier to get away with exaggerating. And that was never our style. So it always felt like a disadvantage because these perceived competitors would say certain things and then the investors would ask us about it. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I just think they're lying, but you can't exactly say that. When they're public, those same people would stop saying that. And I'm like, see, that probably wasn't true because they don't say it anymore. And
that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's super interesting.
Oh yeah. You can get away with so much more when you're private. That's part of what I really liked about public is the rules are real. There's real consequences if people say things that are exaggerated or they shouldn't be saying. So that was one thing I really liked. The other thing I really liked is that the pool of capital available is gigantic compared to private side. Transactions are by far faster and more efficient. So if you want to raise the next, whatever it is, 50 million or 5 billion, it's a super quick process that's very streamlined and mechanized. Whereas on the private side, it's always this long drawn out 6 to 12 month thing with lots of negotiations and silly little nuances. Public side, literally overnight, you can do a transaction.
Makes sense. Actually, now I also understand why Elon Musk just announced that they will probably do their own IPO for Starship business. Yeah. So I think it will also happen this year. And it's probably exactly because of your reason, because they need more capital and they need to collect it easier instead of always going to different institutions. If we now look at Portal, when was the time when you discovered that you want to found this company now?
So as soon as I was out of Squeeze, I started to look at other other stuff, because part of me was like, I'm never doing a startup again. Not because of what happened, but if you had asked me of the 10 years of Squeeze, if you had asked me the last 8 years of it, would I do startup again? I'm like, no, it's too much trouble. It's way too much work. It's like 95% pain, only 5% exciting part or happy, exciting parts. So I'm like, I'm not doing it again. But as I was out, I was looking at other things. And then through talking to people about other startup things or pharma things, my head just kept going back to the same problems as far as I just really think that cell therapies have to be a huge part of the future. And if you can put whatever you want in them and do it at the point of care, that is what the field needs to be able to unlock this big world of I can just take a patient's cells out, engineer them, put them back in, and cure diseases that are currently uncurable, like cancer, autoimmune disease, a lot of neuro stuff, etc. So my head kept going back to the same problem. Despite that, we got Portal going because I couldn't help myself. I was like, no, this is still the only problem I care about. And we've learned so much about the field and what you can do. If we do this, we can probably do it by far faster and better than what we did at Squeeze. And we learned the lessons on business model. So we won't do the therapies ourselves. We'll just create the technologies and supply it to others such that they can go do it. And we'll do it under kind of a context where it's minimum barrier to entry, meaning that we'll just sell the systems and the consumables. Because if you try to do complicated licensing and royalty and all these other kinds of deals, it becomes a huge barrier to adoption. We wanted to keep it as simple as possible. So that's what kind of led to Portal getting started. And we had help from a few people that used to be at Squeeze. Actually,
I just wanted to ask you, did some of the investors from Squeeze also syndicate, put their money into Portal?
Yeah, so Squeeze's most active public hedge fund was actually some of our earliest money. They put personal money in. Their hedge fund can't do things that are that early, but the partners in that fund put their own money in. And then one of Squeeze's old VC investors put their own money in. There were a few other people we knew from the industry that were executives in the industry that put their money in, like the former CEO of Millipore, which sold it to Merck Serono. He's one of our early investors. So we actually got going with money just from people we knew. We didn't go to outside VCs because we didn't want people to know yet what we were up to. Yeah. And then eventually we went to the VC side. But yeah, and Roche was one of our first customers.
Oh, that's cool. So that means basically all your relations from earlier survived and you still have them at Perfect. Also, after being a first-time founder, I mean, now it's your second business that you are building. Do you do something different right now?
There's obviously a million lessons learned. I think one of the most helpful things is that second time around, you know a lot more people, which helps. Because first time around, just even we were talking about, meeting that first angel was just completely by luck. This time around, there's I've met, most of these people before at some point. So for better and for worse, you have background with them and it's a lot easier. The second thing is, I think what steps you can skip. So there's a lot of things that a first-time founder will worry about that I'm like, that's not going to matter. How detailed your accounting is, I'm like, it's going to be irrelevant. Just track your cash, do some very basic accounting, but really the rest of this is not going to matter. Or how closely you read your non-disclosure agreements. I'm like, no one cares. You will live and die for a lot of reasons. This won't be one of them. So I think you know what steps to skip. I think the parts that are I think one of the biggest parts that's different though, in a not necessarily good way, is that the first time around, every day we continued to exist was an accomplishment. It's people are like, oh, we didn't think you'd make it this far. Bravo. Keep going. Whereas when you've already done it and went to IPO, the second time they're like, oh, so you're going to IPO, right? I'm like, okay, but maybe we'll fail.
Expectations are way higher then. Okay, interesting. It's also good. I mean, if you have more pressure, then sometimes it can also help. But of course, could be also negative. But what would you say is the biggest red flag in a biotech investor that you saw over the two companies now?
I don't think it's unique to them necessarily, but many of them will just chase a trend. Let's say right now, anti-obesity stuff is popular. These same guys would have said no before Novo Nordisk had their big moments. Before they were like, oh, this is stupid. Why would anyone do this? And then the moment it became hot, they're all like, oh my God, of course we love this. And I bet you in a year or two, they'll forget about it again. And so I think just being clear-eyed that there's a lot of herd mentality, even though a lot of them will pretend they don't do herd things. I'm like, no, most of you definitely do herd things. So there's very few that are like that. I think the other important lesson was kind of being careful about whether you go for brand name of the investor versus what is that individual's actual thesis on you. Because sometimes we would let in some brand name investors that were like, oh, it sounds great to have that name in us because we had some big names in us. But then when the next speed bump would come up, they actually didn't care or wouldn't do anything to help. Whereas we had other investors that were less well known, but they would really try hard because they really believed in what we were doing. It wasn't like a trend-based thing that they got in and out, or it was like a hot thing. Oh, Roche just did this deal, I want to be involved in it. They actually believed in what we were doing. So I think it's, I guess, short way to say it is like always better to work with people that share the vision and the commitment, even if they're not necessarily the biggest name, as opposed to go for a name that's only a superficial conviction.
I love that. How would you currently see, like, we are already coming to an end now, so I just have like some very quick last questions. How do you currently see the biotech industry? Because like from my perspective is that like last year AI software was like super in demand, but things are changing. Like in the moment we see like more hype in defense technology. We also see way more hype in healthcare and hardware companies. And I personally feel that biotech is going up again and it's getting more traction. Do you feel the same or do you see that different?
I definitely think it's getting better. I think biotech went through a terrible nuclear winter the past few years after 2021, 2022. So it seems like it's coming back. I think there's immense potential to have new treatments that can make a big difference, and they can be an insane difference maker for the patients, but also huge financial return opportunities for people. I think the problems right now are going to be how many of these technologies are actually new versus a lot of Me Too drugs. So to me, it's a waste of time for biotechs to develop like the next incremental improvement on like a weight loss drug or something like that. But there's too many incentives to do that kind of stuff. And I think that's a big waste of resource. Unfortunately, and we don't have to get into it. Unfortunately, I think the US pricing system enables that because it rewards Me Too drugs. The European and Asian ones don't reward it as much. But anyway, I think that's one of the challenges. I think the other interesting shift in our industry right now is how much of the future innovation is going to come from Asia instead of the US. Because historically, the US was the dominant driver, but that has shifted very quickly. And especially China is getting really good at it. So how do you figure out like a good collaborative global effort for these things? Because I think this petty rivalry of like, oh, US industry versus China industry is kind of childish. You each have advantages and disadvantages. Like, how do you make this kind of global network work better such that collectively we can have better drugs and advancements for everyone? No one's going to have a monopoly on creating the new drugs anymore. Whereas it used to be the US was probably 80% of them.
Armon, thank you so much for joining this episode today. I think it was great. So many great lessons. And as I said, like your background and the story and everything what you did so far is truly impressive. So I wish you all the best for Portal, and maybe we meet again like after your next funding round, because I actually have way more questions prepared for you.
Sounds good. Yeah, and if you're ever in Boston, let me know.
I will. Have a good day.